When my neighbor, the elderly woman next door, tapped me on the shoulder that afternoon and whispered, "Stay awake until 2 in the morning, honey. You are going to find out everything." I felt a chill run down my spine. She was right. What I saw through that window at 2 o'clock in the morning not only completely shattered the image I had of my son, but it also proved to me that sometimes the most dangerous person is the one sleeping in the bedroom right next door. My name is Eleanor. I am 58 years old, and this is the story of how I faked a trip to discover the dark secret my own son was hiding inside my house. But before we continue, make sure you are already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love to know how far our stories are reaching. It all started with small details that my mind tried to ignore. You know that uncomfortable feeling that something is not right, but you cannot identify exactly what. That was what I had been feeling for the last few months, living under the same roof as my son Caleb and his wife Harper. My husband passed away 5 years ago, the victim of a sudden heart attack. Since then, I have lived alone in this 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of Chicago, a house we built brick by brick over 30 years of marriage. Every corner holds memories. The kitchen where we made breakfast on Sundays, the living room where we watched our favorite movies, the backyard garden he tended to with so much care. When Caleb suggested that he and Harper come live with me, I thought it was genuine concern. "Mom, you should not be alone at your age," he told me, with that smile I had known since he was a baby. "Besides, we can split the bills and you will have company." At that moment, at my 53 years of age, I thought it would be nice to have my family close again. How wrong I was. The first few months were quiet. Harper made delicious dinners. Caleb helped with house repairs. We talked about trivial things during meals. Watched television together on Friday nights. Everything seemed normal, almost happy. But then things started to change in a subtle way. First, I noticed they started locking the guest room door. That room was always open. I used it to store old boxes and winter clothes. One day, I tried to go in to grab a blanket and the door was locked. "Oh, Mom, we had a moisture issue in there," Harper explained too quickly. "We do not want your things to get ruined until we can fix it." But I did not remember any moisture problem. The house had been inspected just 6 months ago. I let it go, thinking that maybe I had forgotten some conversation. After all, with age, memory sometimes plays tricks on you, does it not? That was exactly what I wanted to believe. Then came the strange noises during the night. Footsteps in the hallway when everyone should have been asleep, the sound of the front door opening and closing around 11 o'clock, muffled voices coming from the locked room. At first, I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, that maybe they were the natural sounds of an old house settling. But one night, around 1 in the morning, I clearly heard the sound of laughter. It was not Caleb and Harper laughing. They were voices I did not recognize, at least 3 different people conversing in low tones. I got out of bed and walked silently to the hallway. The voices were coming from the guest room. I approached the door with my heart beating 1,000 miles an hour. I pressed my ear against the wood, trying to understand what they were saying. The words were muffled, but I managed to catch fragments. "You need to be discreet. You cannot leave traces. The payment is secured." My hand was on the doorknob when I heard footsteps approaching quickly from the other side. I ran back to my room as silently as possible and pretended to be asleep. I heard the guest room door open, footsteps in the hallway, and then silence. I stayed awake the rest of the night, my heart beating so hard it felt like everyone in the house could hear it. The next morning, during breakfast, I acted as if nothing had happened. Caleb was reading news on his cell phone. Harper was making scrambled eggs. Everything seemed perfectly normal. "Did you sleep well?" I asked casually, watching their reactions. Like a log, Caleb replied without looking up from his phone. Harper just smiled and nodded. But I knew he was lying. I had heard those voices, those footsteps. Something was happening in my house, something they did not want me to know about. The question was, what? I started paying more attention to the small details. I noticed that whenever I went out to get groceries or visit a friend, upon returning there was a different smell in the house. It was not unpleasant, just different, as if someone had been there and then tried to cover it up with air freshener or cleaner. I also perceived changes in their behavior. Caleb, who was always affectionate with me, now seemed to avoid prolonged eye contact. Harper, previously so chatty, became strangely reserved. They whispered to each other when they thought I was not around, stopping abruptly every time I entered the room. One afternoon, while they were out, I tried to open the guest room again. The door remained locked. I looked for the spare key I kept in the kitchen drawer, but it had disappeared. They had taken my own key to my own house. It was then that I made a decision. I needed to find out what was going on. I could no longer live with that constant sensation of being deceived under my own roof, but I knew that confronting them directly would not work. They would simply deny everything, invent convincing excuses, make me look paranoid. No, I needed proof. I needed to catch them in the act, see with my own eyes whatever they were hiding. And for that, I would have to be cunning. I would have to make them believe I suspected nothing, that I was still the naive and trusting mother they clearly considered me to be. The idea came up while I was having coffee one afternoon. My sister Sarah lived in Phoenix and had been inviting me to visit for months. It was the perfect excuse. I would announce a one-week trip, put on the whole show of leaving, but in reality, I would stay hidden watching. The question was, where? That was when I thought of Martha, my neighbor. She had lived alone in the house across the street from mine for over 20 years. We were friends. We drank coffee together on Saturdays. We shared confidences. If there was anyone I could trust, it was her. Besides, from her bedroom window, she had a perfect view of my driveway. I visited Martha one afternoon when Caleb and Harper were working. I told her everything: the night noises, the locked doors, the changes in behavior, the growing feeling that something very bad was happening in my own house. As I spoke, I saw her expression change from curiosity to genuine concern. "Eleanor, honey," she told me, holding my hands between hers, "I have noticed strange things too." My heart accelerated. "What kind of things?" Martha got up and went to the window, motioning for me to join her. "Look there, your house. In the last few weeks, I have seen different cars stopping out front late at night. People I do not recognize entering through the side door, always around 11 o'clock or midnight. I felt my stomach turn. How many people?" She thought for a moment. "Hard to say for sure. Sometimes it seems to be 2, other times up to 4 or 5. They stay a short time, maybe 1 or 2 hours at most. Then they leave just as discreetly as they arrived." That confirmed my worst suspicions. Something was definitely happening in my house during the night. Something that involved strangers sneaking in and out. "Martha," I said determinedly, "I need your help. I am going to pretend I am traveling, and I need to stay here, watching. Can I count on you?" She did not hesitate for a second. "Of course, honey. You can stay in the guest room. It has the best view of your house. Let us find out together what those 2 are plotting." There was a determination in her eyes that gave me courage. I was not alone in this. I spent the following days planning every detail. I called Sarah and filled her in on the plan. She agreed to be my alibi in case Caleb or Harper tried to call me. I packed a suitcase with enough clothes for a week. I bought a bus ticket I would not use. I printed hotel reservation confirmations in Phoenix. During dinner on a Wednesday, I dropped the news. "I am going to visit Aunt Sarah this weekend," I announced casually while serving rice. "It has been so long since I have seen her, and she has been insisting a lot." I watched their reactions closely. Caleb stopped chewing for a split second before responding. "That is great, Mom. It will do you good." But it was Harper's reaction that caught my attention the most. Her eyes lit up in a way she tried to hide quickly. "For how long are you going to stay?" she asked, with a tone that tried to sound unconcerned but carried anxiety. "About 5-6 days," I replied. "Maybe a week. I have not decided yet." I saw the look they exchanged. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A look of relief, excitement, complicity. Whatever it was not the normal reaction of a son concerned about his mother's trip. "Awesome," said Caleb. "You deserve a break. Do not worry about anything here. We will take care of everything." "I bet you will take care of it," I thought bitterly. The days passed until Friday. I made sure to act completely normal, without raising any suspicion. I commented on the trip cheerfully. I asked if they needed me to bring anything back from Phoenix. Caleb even offered to drive me to the bus station, but I refused, saying I preferred to take a taxi. On Friday morning, I put my suitcase visibly in the living room. I dressed in comfortable clothes for traveling. I left my cell phone charging conspicuously. Every move was calculated to convince them that I was really leaving. Around 10 in the morning, I called a taxi. Caleb hugged me at the door. "Have a safe trip, Mom. Anything comes up, call." Harper waved from the window with a smile that did not reach her eyes. The taxi took me to the corner, where I asked the driver to stop. I paid and got out with the suitcase. As soon as the car turned the corner and disappeared from view, I walked quickly toward Martha's house through the back alley, where no one from my house could see me. She was waiting for me at the side door. "Did you make it?" she whispered, as if we were in a secret operation. "I made it," I replied, feeling a mixture of nervousness and determination. "Now we just have to wait." Martha took me up to the guest room on the second floor. It was a simple but cozy room, with a twin bed, an antique wardrobe, and, most importantly, a window that gave a direct view of the front of my house. I put my suitcase in the corner and sat in the chair near the window. From there I could see the front door, the front lawn, and part of the driveway perfectly. Anyone arriving or leaving, I would see them. "Now," said Martha, putting a cup of coffee on the small table beside me. "It is a matter of patience." The first few hours were slow and torturous. I sat in that chair watching my house like a detective in a cop movie. Caleb left for work around 2 in the afternoon, as he always did on Fridays. Harper stayed home, and I saw her a few times through the living room window, apparently doing normal household chores. Martha brought me lunch, a ham and cheese sandwich I could barely eat. My stomach was churning with anxiety. What if I was wrong? What if there was nothing suspicious happening and I was just being paranoid? But then I remembered the voices I heard. The cars Martha saw, their strange behavior. No, something was wrong. The afternoon dragged on until dusk. Caleb returned from work around 7. I watched through the window when he parked the car and went inside. Everything seemed completely normal. They ate dinner. I watched them through the kitchen window moving back and forth. At 9, the living room lights went out. At 10, their bedroom light turned on briefly before going dark too. "I think nothing is going to happen today," I commented to Martha, feeling a pang of disappointment. She shook her head. "Wait until later. The things I saw always happened after midnight, so we waited." Martha dozed off on the sofa in the living room while I kept vigil at the window, fighting against the sleep that threatened to overtake me. It was exactly at 12:15 that I saw the first movement. A dark car, a sedan I did not recognize, parked in front of my house. My heart raced. 2 people got out, a man and a woman, both dressed casually but carrying large backpacks. They did not go to the front door. Instead, they walked along the side of the house toward the back. I woke Martha up quickly. "They are here," I whispered urgently. She jumped up and came to the window. A few minutes later, I saw lights turn on inside. Not in the living room or the kitchen, but somewhere deeper in the house, probably in the guest room they kept locked. At 12:45, another car arrived. This time, it was 3 people, 2 men and a woman. Same pattern, backpacks, entry through the back, discreet movements. My brain worked frantically trying to understand what was happening. What kind of illegal activity was my son involved in? Drugs? Smuggling? Something worse? "Eleanor." Martha touched my arm gently. "You are shaking." It was true. "My brain cannot understand what is going on in there," I said with a tense voice. "I need to see with my own eyes." She looked at me with concern. "It is dangerous. What if they see you?" She was right. But the need to know, to confirm with my own eyes, was stronger than the fear. "I have a spare key to the side door," I explained. "They do not know I have it. I can enter through the kitchen. It is on the opposite side from the guest room." "If I am quiet? Are you crazy?" Martha whispered, but there was admiration in her voice. "But I understand. If it were my house, my son, I would do the same." She thought for a moment. "Go, but keep your cell phone on silent. If anything goes wrong, you call me, and I call the police immediately." I nodded. I took my cell phone, checked that it was on silent, and went down the stairs of Martha's house with my heart in my throat. The street was silent and dark, only illuminated by the spaced-out streetlights. I walked sticking to the shadows until I reached the backyard of my own house. The side door led to the kitchen. With shaking hands, I took the spare key I kept hidden in my purse. I fitted it into the lock, praying it would not make noise. I turned it slowly. Click! The door opened. I entered and closed it softly behind me. The kitchen was dark and silent. I could hear muffled voices coming from the front part of the house. I took off my shoes and walked barefoot on the cold tile floor. Every step seemed absurdly loud in the silence of the night. My heart was beating so loud I was sure everyone in the house could hear it. I advanced down the hallway, keeping close to the wall. The voices became clearer. They were definitely coming from the guest room. I stopped near the door, breathing as quietly as possible. And then I heard something that froze my blood. "How much did you say he paid?" asked an unknown male voice. $500, replied another voice. I recognized this one. It was Caleb, my son. Not bad for 3 hours of work. I stood paralyzed in the hallway, trying to process what I had just heard. $500 for 3 hours? What kind of work was my son coordinating in my own house? I leaned closer to the door, taking extreme care not to make noise. There was a tiny crack between the door and the wall, just a few millimeters, but enough for me to spy a little of what was happening inside. What I saw left me completely confused. The guest room, which I remembered as a simple space with a bed, a dresser, and some storage boxes, had been completely transformed. Now, it looked like a small studio. There were professional lights mounted on tripods, a large camera on another tripod pointing at the bed, and black fabrics covering all the windows. On the bed was a woman I did not know, wearing a red robe. Beside her, a man adjusted one of the lights. Caleb was near the camera, talking to 2 other people, a young couple observing everything with interest. Harper was in the corner, checking a laptop. It was then that reality hit me like a slap. My son was filming that. He had transformed the guest room of my house into a clandestine adult content studio. The $500 for 3 hours was the payment for the performers. The strangers entering and leaving late at night were customers renting the space or participating in the recordings. I felt nausea rise in my throat. My son, the boy I raised, whom I educated with values, was profiting from this. And worse, he was doing all this in the house my late husband and I built with so much effort and love. How could he? I should have left right then. I should have gone back to Martha's house and called the police. But the anger I felt was so intense that my feet refused to move. I stayed there, watching through the crack, seeing my son direct that production with an ease that showed he had been doing this for a long time. "Okay, let us go for the second scene," Caleb said with a professional voice. "Mark, you enter from here. Laura, you feign surprise. Remember the script we discussed?" There was a script. He was producing elaborate content, not just amateur recordings. This was a structured business. Harper typed something on the laptop. "The live stream has 847 viewers," she announced, paying on average $20 each. I did the math quickly in my head. Almost $17,000 in a single night. And that was just the live stream. It did not include subsequent sales of the recorded content. I started to back away slowly, still processing everything I had discovered. But in the dark, I tripped over a small table I had not seen. A vase on top of it wobbled. I managed to catch it before it fell, but the movement made enough noise to attract attention. "What was that?" I heard Caleb's voice. Footsteps approached the door. I panicked. There was no time to run back to the kitchen. The room door opened, and the hallway light turned on. Caleb was there, standing in the doorway, staring at me. For an interminable moment, the 2 of us just stood looking at each other, both in complete shock. "Mom?" His voice was an incredulous whisper. "What? Should you not be in Phoenix?" I found my voice, although it came out trembling with rage. "And you should not be transforming my house into a... I could not even finish the sentence. The words died in my throat. Harper appeared behind him, her face paling when she saw me. "Damn it," she murmured. The others in the room started whispering among themselves, clearly nervous. Caleb closed the door behind him, leaving just the three of us in the hallway. "Mom, can I explain?" he began. But I interrupted him. "Explain? Explain how you transformed the guest room of my house into a pornography studio? Explain how you have brought strangers into my house without my knowledge? Explain how you look me in the eye every day, knowing what you are doing here." My voice was rising in volume, and he made a desperate gesture for me to lower my tone. "Mom, please, do not shout. The people in the room." "Oh, the people in the room?" My voice was loaded with bitter sarcasm. "Excuse me, I do not want to disturb your porn actors in my own house." Caleb ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he had done since he was a boy, when he was nervous. "Look, I know it looks bad. Does it look bad?" I almost laughed at the absurdity. "This does not just look bad, Caleb. It is betrayal. It is violation. It is illegal. You are operating a commercial business without a license, recording adult content in a residential area, using my property without permission." Harper stepped forward, trying to use a conciliatory tone. "Eleanor, we can talk about this rationally. It does not have to be a drama." I turned to her with an intensity that made her step back. "A drama? You think discovering my son is directing pornographic productions in my house is a drama?" "It is not pornography," Caleb protested defensively. "It is artistic adult content. There is a difference." I looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. "Artistic? You charge $500 per session and have almost 1,000 people paying to watch live. Do not try to convince me that is art, Caleb." He remained silent, knowing I was right. It was Harper who tried another angle. "Look, we have bills to pay. Caleb lost his job 6 months ago and I was demoted at mine. We were desperate. We needed a way to make money fast. And you thought the solution was this?" My voice was broken now, anger giving way to deep sadness. "You could have told me about the financial problems. We could have found a solution together. But this..." I pointed to the locked room door. "This is a line that never should have been crossed." Caleb finally sat on the floor of the hallway, his head in his hands. He looked like a lost boy, not the 32-year-old man he was. "You are right, Mom. You are absolutely right. We lost our way." His voice was choked up. "It started small, just some artistic photos Harper sold online, but the money was so good, so easy, and it escalated," I completed bitterly. "One thing led to another, until you were producing explicit content in my house, bringing strangers in without me knowing, locking doors, lying about moisture." I looked at the two of them. "Did you have a plan for what to do when I found out? Or did you think you would manage to hide this forever?" Harper looked at the floor. "We thought you would never find out. You sleep early, you go out during the day. We had everything timed." The calculated coldness of that hit me. They had planned meticulously how to deceive me, studied my routine to exploit my own house without my knowledge. "How long?" I asked with a tired voice. "How long has this been going on?" Caleb hesitated before answering. 4 months. We started right after moving here. 4 months. A third of the time we lived together they were doing this. All those nights I heard strange noises and convinced myself I was imagining things." "And how much money did you make in that time?" I did not know why I was asking, but somehow I needed to know the extent of the betrayal. Harper and Caleb exchanged looks. About $8,000, she admitted quietly. $8,000. In 4 months, using my house, my electricity and water bills, my space, and I, the owner of the house, had not seen a single penny. Worse, I was paying the increased bills because of the extra electricity usage they were causing. "What is going on out there?" shouted a male voice from the guest room. "Can we continue, or what?" Caleb got up quickly. "You have to leave," he shouted back. "A problem came up. The session for today is over." There were protests on the other side of the door. Voices complaining about money paid and contracts. I heard Caleb negotiate quickly, promising refunds and future sessions for free. In the following minutes, I watched as the 5 people who were in the room left hurriedly, some casting curious glances at me, others avoiding my gaze completely. When everyone was gone and the house was finally silent, the 3 of us were in the living room. I sat in the armchair, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that kept me going was dissipating, leaving behind only tiredness and sadness. Caleb sat in a single chair. Harper remained standing near the door, as if considering running away. "So," I began, "what happens now?" Caleb looked at me with pleading eyes. "Mom, I know this is unforgivable, but please, do not call the police. That would ruin our lives, our futures. And you did not think this would ruin mine?" I replied calmly. That discovering my son betrayed me in this way would not destroy me? He had no answer for that. Harper finally spoke, her voice small and hesitant. "Eleanor, we are going to stop. Right now, immediately. We are going to dismantle everything. You will never even know this existed again." "Oh, you are going to stop because you got caught?" I asked with sarcasm. "Not because you realized it was wrong, but because you no longer have a choice?" The silence that followed was answer enough. I stood up and walked to the window, looking at the dark street. Over on the other side, I could see Martha's house, a light still on in the second story. She was waiting, probably worried about me. "You are going to dismantle that studio tomorrow morning," I said without turning around. "Every piece of equipment, every light, every piece of fabric, everything is going to leave my house." "Yes, Mom, of course." Caleb nodded quickly, and then I continued, still looking out the window. "We are going to have a serious conversation about the future, about whether you continue living here, about trust, about respect." I turned to face them. "But now I am going to leave this house and go back to where I am staying. I need time to process all this, to decide what to do. And you?" I looked Caleb straight in the eyes. "You are going to use that time to think very hard about the choices you made." I walked toward the side door. Caleb stood up. "Mom, where are you going?" "That does not matter now," I replied. "You managed to deceive me for 4 months. Now it is my turn to have privacy." I left through the side door without looking back. The night air was cold against my face. My legs were shaking as I walked back to Martha's house. When I arrived, she was at the door waiting for me, her face full of worry. "Eleanor, thank God. I was about to call the police. What happened?" I went in and collapsed on the sofa in her living room. And then, finally, the tears came. Tears of rage, of sadness, of betrayal, of disappointment. I cried like I had not cried since my husband's funeral. Martha sat beside me, putting her arm around my shoulders, letting me cry without asking questions. When I finally managed to speak, I told her everything. The studio, the recordings, the money, the conversation in the hallway. Martha listened in silence, nodding occasionally, her expression mixing shock and indignation. "My God, Eleanor, in your own house, your own son." "I do not know what to do," I admitted, my voice hoarse from crying so much. "Part of me wants to kick them out immediately, never speak to Caleb again. But he is my son, Martha, my only son. How can I just cut him out of my life?" She thought carefully before answering. "You cannot control what he did, Eleanor, but you can control how you react to it. And whatever decision you make, whatever it is, will be the right one for you." I spent the rest of the night awake at Martha's house, looking out the window toward my house. The lights were on. I could see shadows moving inside. Caleb and Harper probably starting to dismantle the studio immediately, as I had ordered. My cell phone rang several times. Messages from Caleb. "Mom, please, come home. We need to talk. Mom, I am sorry, so sorry. Please, do not abandon me. You are all I have." I read every message, but I did not reply to any. I was not ready yet. The sun rose over the neighborhood, bringing a new day but no clarity to my confused heart. Martha made breakfast. Fresh bread, strawberry jam, cheese, but I could barely eat. My stomach was still churning from everything that had happened. "You have to eat something," she insisted gently, pushing a cup of hot coffee into my hands. "You need to keep up your strength for what is coming." She was right. I took a few sips of coffee, letting the hot liquid comfort me a little. Around 9 in the morning, my cell phone rang. It was Caleb. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the answer button. Martha looked at me. "You do not have to answer, if you do not want to." "No, I need to," I replied. I needed to hear what he had to say. I answered but said nothing, waiting for him to take the initiative. Mom? His voice was tired, as if he had not slept either. Mom, please, do not hang up. Just I need you to know that we dismantled everything. Every piece of equipment is packed. The room is empty. It is as if nothing ever happened there. Except it did happen, I replied with a cold voice. Except it did happen for 4 months in my house, without my knowledge, without my consent. I heard him take a deep breath on the other end of the line. I know, and I know apologies are not enough, but I need to try to explain. Can you give me at least that? I looked at Martha, who made a gesture of support. You have 10 minutes, I told Caleb. So start. There was a pause before he began speaking. When I lost my job 6 months ago, it was devastating. It was not just the loss of income, it was the feeling of failure, that I had let you down, let Harper down, let myself down, he continued, the words coming out in a torrent. Harper was working 2 jobs to make up for it, but even so, we could barely pay our bills. We had credit card debt piling up, the rent on our old apartment overdue. That was why I suggested moving into your house. It was not just to keep you company, it was because we were desperate. Part of me felt sorry for him, but the greater part, the part that was still hurt and betrayed, remained firm. That explains why you moved. It does not explain the studio. I know, he said quickly. Let me continue. Harper had a friend who worked with boudoir photography. You know? Those sensual but not explicit photos. He suggested she pose, said it paid well, and it really did pay. So, at first, it was just Harper posing for photos, he continued. But that photographer had contacts in the adult content industry. He started offering more money if she made more explicit content, and the money was too tempting to refuse. 2,000, 3 per session. It was more than I made in a month at my old job. I closed my eyes, trying not to imagine my daughter-in-law doing that. And you were okay with that? With your wife making that kind of content? At first, no, he admitted. We fought a lot about it, but she convinced me it was just work, it meant nothing, and the money. Mom, the money was saving our lives. So how did it go from Harper posing to you directing full productions in my house? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Caleb sighed. The photographer needed an assistant. He offered for me to help for a percentage. I accepted. Soon I realized we could make more if we made our own material. We controlled the entire production. And my house was the perfect place, I completed bitterly. Big, empty during the day, with an owner who slept early and trusted you blindly. I know how that sounds, Mom. I know it sounds calculated and cold, and maybe it was. But at that moment it seemed like the only solution. The only solution? I repeated incredulously. The only solution was to transform my house into a pornographic studio without telling me? Did you not think about looking for another job? Doing honest odd jobs? Asking for help? Asking for help from whom? His voice rose a little. You are retired yourself, living on a pension. We had no one else. He had a point, however small, but it still did not justify it. Your time is up, I said coldly. Thanks for the explanation, but that changes nothing. Mom, wait. I hung up before he could continue. I put the cell phone on silent and set it aside. Martha was watching me thoughtfully. What are you thinking, honey? I got up and went to the window, looking again at my house. I am thinking I need professional help to deal with this. I need to know my legal rights. What can I do? Do you know any lawyers? She asked. I thought for a moment. My friend Karen. She is a family and real estate lawyer. I am going to call her. I took my cell phone and found Karen's number. We met in an embroidery group a few years ago and kept in occasional contact. She answered on the 3rd ring. Eleanor, what a pleasant surprise. How are you? Karen, I need your professional help. Can you see me today? It is urgent. Something in my tone must have alerted her because she became immediately serious. Of course. I can see you in my office in an hour. Is everything okay? No, it is not, I admitted. But I will explain to you in person. I hung up and turned to Martha. I am going to get ready and go to her office. Do you mind if I leave my things here for now? Of course not, honey. This is your house for as long as you need. An hour later, I was sitting in Karen's elegant office downtown. She offered me coffee, which I accepted gratefully, and then listened to me while I told the whole story. To her credit, she kept a professional expression throughout the account, only making notes occasionally. When I finished, she put her pen aside and looked at me seriously. Eleanor, what your son and daughter-in-law did is illegal on several levels. Unauthorized use of property, operating a business without a license in a residential area, possible violation of zoning laws, and depending on what exactly was filmed, there may be other legal complications. I felt my stomach sink. Are you saying they could go to jail? Potentially, yes, Karen replied honestly. If you decide to press criminal charges, there is a legal basis for that. But, she leaned forward, there are also other options. You can opt for a civil resolution, essentially evicting them, possibly collecting damages, but without involving the police. And if I do nothing? I asked softly. If I just forgive and move on? Karen gave me a gentle but firm look. Then you are signaling that this type of behavior is acceptable. And they may continue, maybe not in your house, but somewhere else. Besides, Eleanor, you deserve justice for what was done to you. We spent the next hour discussing my options. Karen explained every path I could take, the consequences of each, the pros and cons. When I left her office, my head was spinning with legal information, but at least I had a path forward. I returned to Martha's house in the middle of the afternoon, mentally exhausted, but with a decision made. She was watering the plants in the garden when I arrived. Well? She asked gently. Did you manage to get clarity? A little, I replied. I know what I need to do now. I just need the courage to do it. That night I wrote a letter. Not for Caleb and Harper, but for myself. I wrote about everything I was feeling, the betrayal, the sadness, the anger, but also the love I still felt for my son despite everything. I wrote about my husband, about how he would be disappointed in Caleb. I wrote until my hand hurt. The next day, Sunday, I finally returned home. I did not warn Caleb and Harper that I was coming. I simply appeared at the front door at 10 in the morning and used my key to enter. They were in the kitchen drinking coffee. When they saw me, Caleb stood up so fast he knocked over his chair. "Mom, you came back!" His words came out in an anxious rush. I was so worried. I did not know where you were, if you were okay. "Sit down, Caleb," I said calmly. "The three of us need to talk." I sat at the kitchen table, in the same spot where I had thousands of breakfasts over the years. Harper and Caleb sat down too, both looking like children waiting for a scolding. The guest room was right there next to us. I could see the open door. The room was completely empty now. Just the bare white walls and clean floor. They had really removed everything. First, I began, keeping my voice steady. I want you to know that I consulted a lawyer. I know exactly what my legal rights are and what I can do about this situation. I saw fear pass through Caleb's eyes. "Mom, please, you are not going to." "Let me finish," I interrupted. "Legally, I could press criminal charges against you. I could have you arrested. I could ruin your lives the same way you risked ruining mine." The silence in the kitchen was absolute. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, the hum of the refrigerator. "But I am not going to do that," I continued. I saw immediate relief on their faces, but I raised my hand. "I am not finished yet. I am not going to press criminal charges, but this has conditions." I took an envelope from my purse, documents Karen had prepared for me. "First, you are going to sign this agreement, acknowledging what you did and agreeing to pay compensation for the unauthorized use of my property." I put the papers on the table. $1,500, less than what you earned, but enough to cover the increased utility costs and to show that actions have consequences. Caleb opened his mouth to protest, but Harper put her hand on his arm, silencing him. "Second," I continued, "you are going to move out. You have 2 months to find another place and get out of my house. I am giving that time because I know you need to get organized financially, but at the end of 2 months, I want you out." "Mom, don't," began Caleb, but I cut him off. "Third, you are going to stop that activity completely, not in another place, not in secret. You are going to look for honest jobs and rebuild your lives the right way. And you are going to go to therapy, both individual and couples, to understand why you thought this was acceptable." I pushed another document across the table. "This is an additional contract. where you accept these conditions. If you violate any of them, the agreement not to press criminal charges becomes void, and I go straight to the police with all the evidence." Harper took the papers with shaking hands. You have evidence?" I lied partially. I had seen everything, but I did not have photos or recordings, but they did not need to know that. And that evidence is kept in a safe place, with instructions to be handed to the police if anything happens to me, or if you do not fulfill the agreement. Caleb was crying silently now. "Mom, I am so sorry, so truly sorry. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness." "No, you do not deserve it," I agreed, and my words were harsh but necessary. "You betrayed my trust in the worst possible way, but you are still my son, and part of me will always love you, even when I do not like what you do." I got up from the table. "You have until tomorrow to sign these documents. Karen, my lawyer, is going to come here at 5 in the afternoon to collect the signed copies and witness them. If they are not signed, I am going to proceed with legal criminal action." I walked toward the stairs that led to my room. "And one more thing." I turned at the door. "During these 2 months that you are still going to live here, I want minimal interaction. You make your meals, I make mine. You live your life, I live mine. Understood?" Both nodded, defeated. I went up to my room and closed the door. Only then did I allow my own tears to fall. It had been the hardest thing I ever did. Confronting my son, setting such hard boundaries, accepting that our relationship would never be the same again. The next 2 months were strange and painful. Caleb and Harper signed the documents the next day, as promised. They really looked for an apartment, and to my relief, Caleb got a job at a logistics company. It was not his dream job, but it was honest. We kept the agreement of minimal interaction. We crossed paths in the house occasionally, exchanged polite good mornings and good nights, but nothing beyond that. It was like living with polite strangers. In a way, it hurt more than the initial confrontation. One night, about 6 weeks later, I found an envelope under my bedroom door. Inside was a handwritten letter from Caleb. It was long, detailed, full of apologies and deeper explanations. He talked about the pressure he felt to be successful, about how unemployment had destroyed his self-esteem, about how he got lost, trying to find a fast way back to the top. "I am not asking for forgiveness," the letter said near the end. "I know I do not deserve it, but I want you to know that I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you deserve to have as a son. I am going to work honestly, live honestly, be honest. Not out of legal obligation, but because I finally understood that shortcuts always exact a higher price in the end." I kept the letter in a box with other memories of Caleb, photos of him as a child, drawings he made in school, the Mother's Day card he made when he was 7. One day, maybe, I would be able to look at those things without feeling the stab of betrayal. But that day had not arrived yet. Moving day arrived on a rainy Tuesday in April. They hired a small moving company to take their belongings. I watched from my bedroom window while they loaded boxes and furniture into the truck. It seemed surreal. Just 2 months ago, I believed we were building a family life together under the same roof. When everything was loaded, Caleb came to my room. He knocked lightly on the door. "Mom, can I come in?" I opened the door but said nothing. He was standing in the hallway, looking tired but also cleaner somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "I just wanted to say goodbye," he said softly, "and give you this." He extended an envelope. "It is the first payment of the 1,500. 500 now, 500 in a month, and 500 the following month. As we agreed." I took the envelope without opening it. "And the therapy? I started last week. Dr. Robert Mendez. I can pass you his contact if you want to verify." "Not necessary," I replied. "Just do not stop. Clearly, you need it." He nodded, biting his lip as he did when he was a child and was trying not to cry. "Mom, I know I have no right to ask anything, but do you think that one day, maybe, we can have some kind of relationship again?" I looked at my son, my only son, the boy I held in my arms when he was born, whom I taught to walk and talk, whom I consoled when he had his first heartbreak. And I also saw the man who betrayed me, who used my house and my trust for selfish gains. "I do not know, Caleb," I replied honestly. Maybe, with time, a lot of time. But that depends on you. It depends on you really changing, really growing, really becoming someone worthy of trust again. I'm going to do it, he promised fervently. I swear I'm going to do it. Then show me with actions, not words. Show me over the next months and years. He nodded and turned to leave. At the door, he stopped and looked back. I love you, Mom. I always loved you. And I will always love you. And I am sorry for forgetting to show it in a way that really mattered. I did not reply. I just closed the door gently after he left. From the window, I saw the moving truck depart, Harper in the passenger seat, Caleb driving. They turned the corner and disappeared from view. The house became silent in a way it had not been since they moved in. But it was a good silence, a silence that was mine, in a house that was totally mine again. In the months that followed, I established new routines. I professionally cleaned that guest room, painted the walls a new color, a light and serene blue that brought me peace. I transformed the space into a craft studio, something I always wanted to do. I started taking painting classes. I met new friends. I rebuilt my life focusing on myself. Martha continued to be a constant presence. We drank coffee together every Saturday, as we always did. She never mentioned that night, what happened, unless I brought it up. It was comforting to have someone who knew the whole story but did not judge me for the decisions I made. Caleb kept his financial promises. The payments arrived on the correct day each month. Occasionally, I received messages from him, never long, just short updates. I got a promotion at work. I completed 6 months of therapy. Harper is taking an accounting technician course. I replied briefly, keeping emotional distance, but not being cruel. A year after that Saturday, when I faked the trip to Phoenix, I received a call from Caleb. It was my 59th birthday. Mom, I know we are not in a good place yet, he said hesitantly, but I wanted to wish you a happy birthday. And, if you allow it, we would like to invite you to dinner. No pressure, no expectations, just a dinner. I thought about it for a long moment. A year had passed. A year of therapy for him, a year of healing for me. A year of changes and growth. Okay, I accepted finally, but in a public restaurant, and for only 2 hours. Perfect, he said, and I could hear the relief and joy in his voice. Thank you so much, Mom. The dinner was strange, but not terrible. We talked about superficial things, the weather, their jobs, my new painting hobby. They brought a gift, a beautiful frame for one of my paintings. It was clearly chosen with care and thought. When we said goodbye in the parking lot, Caleb hugged me briefly. I did not fully return the hug, but I did not reject it either. Can we do this again? He asked hopefully. In a few months, I replied. Let us go slowly. Slowly is good, he accepted. Slowly is perfect. While driving home that night, I realized something. The pain was starting to diminish. It was still there, probably always would be on some level, but it was no longer an open and bleeding wound. It was starting to heal, leaving a scar that would always remind me of what happened. But it would no longer stop me from living. I learned valuable lessons in that dark period. I learned that trust, once broken, takes a long time to rebuild, if it can be totally rebuilt at all. I learned that loving someone does not mean accepting just any behavior from them. I learned that setting boundaries, however painful it may be, is sometimes the greatest act of love we can do. I learned that I am stronger than I thought. Strong enough to fake a trip, hide in the neighbor's house, confront my son with his betrayal. Strong enough to set consequences and maintain them. Strong enough not to give in to emotional pressure or maternal guilt. And I learned that houses are more than just walls and roofs. They are sacred spaces where we build our lives, create memories, feel safe. When someone violates that space, they violate something deep and fundamental. But I also learned that we can reclaim those spaces, cleanse them both physically and energetically, and make them ours again. Today, 2 years after that night, my relationship with Caleb is being rebuilt slowly. We have dinner together every 2 months. He calls me every week. Last Christmas, he and Harper came for lunch, and we managed to laugh together at some old family memories. Total trust never returned, and probably never will return. There is always that little voice in my head asking if I am seeing the truth or just another carefully constructed facade. But I am learning to live with that uncertainty, to accept that some relationships change forever, and all we can do is work with the new reality. My house is truly mine again. There are no secrets hidden behind locked doors. There are no strangers entering during the night. There are no lies being woven in the hallways where I used to walk with confidence. It is just a house again. My house, filled only with my things, my memories, my peace. And that light blue guest room, where once existed a dark studio of exploitation and greed, is now filled with sunlight, painting canvases, and the simple joy of creating something beautiful. It is a transformation that reflects my own journey from a betrayed victim to a woman who reclaimed her power and her space. Sometimes, when I sit in the window of that room painting, I look at Martha's house across the street. She is frequently sitting in her own window, maybe remembering that night when she hid me, when we were conspirators in unveiling the truth. We waved to each other, two survivors of different battles, united by the understanding that sometimes courage comes from the most unexpected places. The lesson I carry with me, that I share when friends ask me about that difficult period, is this: trust your instincts. When something seems wrong, it probably is wrong. Do not ignore the signs. Do not convince yourself that you are imagining things. Do not let others invalidate your perceptions. And most importantly, remember that you always have choices. Even in the most painful situations, when we discover betrayals from the people we love most, we still have the power to decide how we respond. We can choose justice, we can choose boundaries, we can choose our own healing above all else. That night when my neighbor tapped my shoulder and said to wait until 2 a.m. changed my life forever. But it changed it in a way that, in the end, made me stronger, wiser, and more sure of my own worth. And for that, strangely, I am grateful. Because sometimes we need to see the darkness to really appreciate the light. We need to experience betrayal to understand the value of honesty. We need to feel the pain of disappointment to know how to set healthy boundaries. And sometimes we need to temporarily lose those we love to discover that we are complete by ourselves. This story did not have the happy ending of fairy tales. There was no magical reconciliation where everything went back to how it was before. Because in real life, some things when broken can never be totally restored. But it had an honest ending, an ending where I learned to live with the scars, to move forward with dignity, and to build a new version of happiness that depended on no one but myself. So, if you are going through something similar, if you suspect someone close is betraying or using you, if you feel that uneasiness in your stomach you cannot explain, my advice is, investigate. Not out of paranoia, but out of self-care. You deserve to know the truth, however painful it may be, because living a lie is worse than facing a hard truth. And if you discover that your suspicions were right, know that you are going to survive. It is going to hurt. It is going to be hard. You are going to feel like your world crumbled. But you are going to get up. You are going to reclaim your space, your peace, your dignity. And one day, when you look back, you will realize that that dark moment was actually the beginning of a stronger and more authentic version of yourself. Today, when I walk through the rooms of my house, I no longer feel that weight in my chest. I no longer wonder what is happening behind closed doors. I do not wake up in the middle of the night imagining strange voices. It is just me, my hobbies, my friends, my quiet and honest life. The blue room where I paint has now become my sanctuary. Every brushstroke on those canvases is an act of reclamation, of space, of peace, of myself. Some of my paintings portray serene gardens. Others show storms passing over landscapes. They are reflections of my journey, of the storm I passed through, and the calm I found on the other side. Martha remains my confidant and closest friend. Last week, while we drank our Saturday coffee, she told me something that stayed with me. You know, Eleanor, when it all started, I was afraid you would never recover. But look at you now. You didn't just survive, you blossomed. Her words made me realize she was right. I was not just a survivor. I was someone who had transformed betrayal into growth, pain into wisdom, trauma into strength. That 58-year-old woman who faked a trip and hid in the neighbor's house, trembling with fear of what she might discover, had become a 60-year-old woman who was no longer afraid of anything. As for Caleb and Harper, I hear they are doing well. He got another promotion at work. She completed her technical course and got a job at an accounting firm. They paid every penny of the $1,500, and Caleb continues in therapy. He says he plans to continue indefinitely, that he discovered he needs that space to process not just what he did, but why he did it. Part of me is proud to see that he is really trying to change. Another part, the part that still holds the scars of that betrayal, remains cautious. Maybe one day trust can be totally restored. Maybe not. And I am learning to accept that both outcomes are valid. What matters is that I set my boundaries, defended my space, and refused to be a passive victim. I took control of the situation in the only way I could, with truth, clear consequences, and a refusal to allow their behavior to define my worth or my peace. There are moments, usually late at night when the house is still, that I still think about that Friday. I see myself again sitting in Martha's window, heart racing, watching strange cars arrive at my house. I feel again that icy fear when I entered through the side door, walked down the dark hallway, and spied through the crack of that door. But then I remember what came after. The courage I found to confront, the strength I discovered to set boundaries, the resilience I demonstrated in rebuilding my life. And I realized that that night, however painful it may have been, was also a gift. The gift of seeing the truth and having the opportunity to act on it. Some people never find out when they are being betrayed. They live years in lies, believing in facades, trusting people who do not deserve trust. I had the chance to see, to know, to choose, and I chose myself. I chose my dignity, my peace, my sacred space. So, when I look at my reflection in the mirror now, I see wrinkles that were not there 2 years ago, marks of sleepless nights, of tears shed, of stress lived. But I also see clearer eyes, a more upright posture, an expression of someone who knows her worth and is not afraid to defend it. This is my story. The story of a woman who discovered the worst possible secret in the most unexpected way, and who found within herself the strength not only to survive, but to thrive. It is not a story with a perfect ending, but it is a real, honest, and hopefully inspiring story for anyone facing their own betrayals and challenges. And if there is a final message I want to leave, it is this. You are stronger than you imagine. When you are confronted with betrayal, lies, or violation of your space and trust, you have within you resources you do not even know exist. Believe in your instincts, have the courage to seek the truth, and never, ever accept less than you deserve. Because at the end of the day, the only person who really needs to be on your side, the only person you need to be able to trust completely, the only person who must never betray you, is yourself. And when you honor that, when you put yourself first and defend your boundaries, nothing and no one can really destroy you. My house is mine again. My life is mine again. My peace is mine again. And that, I discovered, is the greatest victory of all. Now, if you like this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments which part left you with your mouth open. Oh, and do not forget to become a member to have access to exclusive videos that I do not publish here. I will see you there.